Live from Calgary, this is the CFL Report on TSN. We have the highlights from Week 19. A preview of the Tiger Cats and the Stampeders and their final prep for the playoffs. And the ABCs of coaching, the Coach's Report Card for 1987. TSN CFL Report. It's our game around here, brought to you by Carling O'Keefe Brewery. Coming up later on TSN, our game of the week, the Hamilton Tiger Cats, Calgary Stampeders, live from McMahon Stadium in Calgary, a rematch from Week 19. The Stampeders won last week in Hamilton by a single point. Hi, everyone. I'm John Wells, along with Leif Pedersen. Again, another tough week for the Canadian Football League. Harpooned this week, we understand, by Sports Illustrated magazine. And I don't quite understand why Sports Illustrated was really up doing a story on the CFL.
Well, John, the article to me is meaningless. It really says nothing. And I'm getting really kind of tired of hearing all this negative publicity about the Canadian Football League. It'd be nice just once to see a positive article written about the league. Although, on the other hand, I think the league definitely has to take some positive steps and make some announcements for 1988, what they are going to do, and then maybe we can get some better reporting on it.
Well, there was a little positive news yesterday. The so-called emergency meeting of the Canadian Football League Players Association turned out to be not that at all. We had a good chance to chat with George Reed, and they're looking positively towards the 1988 season.
Well, I think they're making a big step in the fact that they are going to be as cooperative as they possibly can with the league. They realize the league is in trouble, and they would like to do everything that they can to make the league better, and they will cooperate to the fullest. And that means maybe some pay cuts, and they will comply.
All right, Leif, we'll get to more on marketing the Canadian Football League a little bit later on, but right now, Peter Watts has the CFL Notebook.
All right, John, thank you. It is just about playoff time here in the Canadian Football League. And if last weekend's games are any indication, we are in for an entertaining postseason in the CFL. 3 one-point contests last week involving the 6 teams who are bound for postseason play. And the results certainly suggest that there is no prohibitive favorite for this year's Grey Cup final in Vancouver on November 30th. The playoffs begin next weekend. A week from Sunday here in Toronto, it'll be the Argonauts hosting the Hamilton Ticats in the East Division semifinal. Argonauts took the season series 3-1. Game 1 at Hamilton, July 27th, was won on the final play of the game. A 3-yard touchdown pass from Toronto's Gilbert Renfro to Tony Johns. A month later in Toronto, the Ticats won at 28-25 on Bernie Ruoff's field goal with 19 seconds to play in regulation time. Then on September 7th, the two clubs met again at Ivor Wynne Stadium, and the Argonauts surprised the Ticats 25-19. Gil Fennerty's 2-yard touchdown run early in the fourth quarter put the Argonauts into the lead for good. 2 weeks later in Toronto, the home side won for the first time this year. Fennerty again was the star, this time rushing 19 times for 76 yards and 3 touchdowns as the Argonauts whipped Hamilton 39-29. The Ticats have lost 7 of their last 8 games heading into this weekend's final game of the regular schedule. Not the kind of record a team wants to take into the playoffs. Team chemistry, intensity, whatever you want to call it, the Ticats have been hurt badly by an inconsistent kicking game. Roy Kurtz missed 3 of 4 field goal tries in last week's loss to Calgary, and he only averaged about 50 yards per kickoff. Steve Stapler handled the punting and averaged only 29 yards per kick. Against the Toronto duo of Hank Olisic and Lance Chomick, that is a major problem. The Argonauts are playing awfully well right now, particularly on defense. Toronto closes out the regular season Sunday at home against Winnipeg. I look for that to be a preview of the Eastern Final. The Eskimo loss to BC last Sunday clinched first place in the West for the Lions, and it means the Eskimos will host Calgary in the West Division semifinal. These two teams have not met since Labor Day, when the Stampeders won 29-20 in Calgary. In that game, wide receiver Larry Willis caught 7 passes for 140 yards and a touchdown. Stampeders also recorded 4 sacks, and Greg Peterson picked off 2 passes. Calgary also did not give up a single turnover. Earlier in the season, the Eskimos wiped out the Stampeders 54-16 at Commonwealth Stadium. And the story of that game was punt returner extraordinaire Henry Williams. Gizmo had 221 yards on 7 punt returns and scored 2 touchdowns in that contest. In fact, 3 of Williams' 5 touchdowns this year have come against Calgary. Obviously, stopping Williams will be a prime objective for Stampeders special teams. This is a very hard game to handicap. Calgary's been a much different team under Larry Kuharich, while the Eskimos seem to lack the killer instinct of some of those great teams of the early 80s. Stampeders have not won at Commonwealth Stadium since August 19, 1980. And if Harold Holloman's neck injury prevents him from playing next week, the Stampeders will be hard-pressed to break the jinx. I look for the Argonauts to meet the Bombers in Winnipeg in the East Division Final in 2 weeks' time. I think the Eskimos will beat Calgary and go against the Lions in Vancouver 2 weeks from now in the Western Final. And even though the Bombers are in the East Division this year, that was decided at the boardroom level. Really, the Bombers are a West Division team, and we could very well see an all-West Grey Cup final come November 30th at BC Place Stadium. I'm Peter Watts. That's CFL Notebook.
Okay, Peter, 30 minutes to kick off here in Calgary, and Tom Porras is the starting quarterback for the Hamilton Tiger Cats tonight. We look back to last year and the exciting finish in the Eastern Division in the playoffs, and the Hamilton Tiger Cats coming from behind to beat the Argonauts. Is this a team that can do it again this year?
John, I think the situations are totally different. I think last year Hamilton was really building with a great deal of momentum towards the playoffs, and even though they played poorly in the first game of the 2-game total point, they still had that momentum going in the playoffs. This year, a little different story. They've been really struggling as they approach the end of 1987, and I'm not quite sure that they can regroup and do it once again.
Well, they'll have to have a pretty good football game tonight against the Calgary Stampeders to get rolling towards the playoffs. We'll have it live for you on TSN. Back to the CFL Report on TSN as we get ready to bring you the Hamilton Tiger Cats and the Calgary Stampeders final regular season game for both teams live from McMahon Stadium in Calgary. Over the years, a lot of people have pointed to marketing as being one of the major problems that has surfaced in Canadian football. We thought we'd try and get a few answers and maybe some solutions to a marketing problem in Canadian football. We have on the sidelines Alan Wiegand of Hayhurst Communications in Calgary. Alan, we wanted to talk to you about what you could do to market this product of Canadian football.
Yeah. John, I'm not sure that it's, in one sense, that it's not a marketing problem. It's not something that they're going to be able to tackle with advertising or promotion or gimmicks at the stadium to get people in. I think it's a fundamental product problem is the reason that the people aren't sitting in the stands.
Seems to us at many times that it's a matter of perception. How do you change the people's perception of this product we know as Canadian football?
It may well be perception, but in marketing and advertising, perception is reality, unfortunately. And so you have to change the reality. The first thing they've got to do is to figure out what that perception really is, what's creating that perception. I think that the one suggestion that I would make, that the place that they should start is to get out and do some research with those folks that aren't in the stands, that used to be here. The people who have been out, been faithful supporters of CFL, find out why it is that they're staying away, and then see if, based on that information, that they can do something with the product to deliver the entertainment that the people wanted.
We look back to product, though, and we look back to last weekend. 3 games were won by a single point. I mean, the product on the field many times this year hasn't been all that bad. It hasn't been a drastic season.
Yeah. Well, for the folks that, for some folks, it hasn't been that bad. But obviously, for the people that aren't there, they do perceive it as being a problem. Let me just give you a bit of an analogy, and it's not that it's not savable, and this analogy I think may help with that. You remember back to the Starkist tuna problem that they just had a fundamentally bad product, and they had some major problems with it. After that, in terms of a marketing sense, they could have packaged it differently. They could have put it in see-through cans. They could have put scratch and sniff labels on it, for that matter. They couldn't give it away at that point. The thing is that after going back and changing the product, getting a good product back, Starkist is back and they're selling. I think there's an analogy there that says the CFL if it can really understand what it is that they're not delivering to those fans, has a real good chance to be able to come back and get those fans back in the seats.
All right. Thank you very much, Alan.
Okay, John.
Pleasure
Thank
to
you.
talk to you.
Thank you.
Well, 1987 has been a tough year like many years before it for coaches. Tonight, we present the ABCs of football and the 1987 CFL Coaches Report Cards.
We'll start things off on the West Coast, where the Lions fired Don Matthews and replaced him with defensive coach Larry Donovan. And under Donovan, the Lions have won 3 straight to clinch top spot in the West. But to be fair, Donovan inherited a talented team that was just getting healthy after a rash of injuries, so maybe he shouldn't get all the credit for the turnaround. However, it does look as though Donovan has instilled some spirit back into a Lions team that was floundering. BC looks strong heading into the playoffs, so we'll give Donovan a B. When Edmonton coach Jackie Parker retired early this season, the Eskimos wasted no time in naming Joe Faragelli as his replacement. Faragelli inherited a Grey Cup caliber team and avoided making any drastic changes. Edmonton has played well most of the season, but they have shown signs of not being able to win the big game. The Eskimos had the talent to finish first in the West, but they didn't seem to have the intensity they had last season. Faragelli has to be partially responsible, so we'll give him a B-. The Calgary Stampeders were floundering mid-season, so Bob Vespasiani was let go in favor of offensive coach Larry Kuharich. Coach Q has turned the Stamps into solid Grey Cup contenders. Kuharich has kept his team loose, inspired, and has returned them to the level they played last season. And Kuharich has a great shot at becoming Coach of the Year. He's done a super job with the Stampeders, and we're glad to give him an A. John Gregory took over a team that had high hopes for their first playoff berth in 10 years, but that optimism quickly faded as the Riders were again eliminated from the postseason. In all fairness, though, Gregory had to deal with the fact he had a bushel of quarterback injuries which hurt his team's continuity. Gregory is a good coach who seems to be building a better team in Regina, and on that basis, we'll give him a C+. Mike Riley took over a Blue Bombers team that was probably the most talented in the CFL. He's led Winnipeg to the best record in the league, and the Bombers look like odds-on favorites for the Grey Cup. Riley's quietly efficient manner is just right for a team like the Bombers. He gets them up whether they're playing a strong team or a weak one. Riley did a good job of letting the team adjust to him while he adjusted to the team as well, and that's been a winning formula for the Blue Bombers, so we'll give Mike Riley an A-. It's been a tough season for Al Bruno and the Tiger Cats. First, they fall victim to complacency, then Bruno falls victim to a mild heart attack. That left the reins with assistant Ted Schmitz. Schmitz is a different type of coach than Bruno, but he hasn't made a difference to the Tabbies, who still look uninspired. The Ticats still have lots of problems, and Schmitz doesn't seem to have the solutions. As a pair, we'll give the Bruno-Schmitz exactor a D. Things are a lot happier in Toronto, where Bob Obilovich has seen his team improve steadily all season. Obilovich has done a good job integrating the rookies and newcomers with the veterans, and the Boatmen seem to be peaking at just the right time. Obilovich started the season with a lot of questions, and he's done a great job of answering most of them correctly. Give Bob Obilovich a solid B+. And finally to Ottawa, where Fred Glick managed to keep his cool in the heat of 13 straight defeats. Glick has made the best of a bad situation with the Eastern Riders, and his patience with the younger players should pay off eventually. Now, a coach doesn't get all the credit when his team wins, so we won't dump on a guy who inherited a weak team with lots of holes. So give Glick a C for his perseverance, if nothing else.
Well, what do you think, Leifer? How did the grades work out for the coaches in '87?
Well, you know, I kind of disagree with the one from Mike Riley, A-. You know, granted, he's got a great team, but he's a young guy. Mike Riley, what is he, 32 years of age, and he comes in and takes over a team. He gets a solid A. Forget the minus part. Fred Glick, you guys are being too kind to him. Give him a D or an F or whatever you can find. And Al Bruno, you guys deserve a D because you hung with some veterans you should have got rid of early in the year.
Okay, Leifer. The coach's report card. We may see how true that comes when we do the Coach of the Year in Edmonton coming up in January. More ahead on TSN CFL Report. Vancouver, Alberta, as we welcome you back to the CFL Report live from McMahon Stadium in Calgary. 23 minutes to kick off tonight. The Calgary Stampeders, Hamilton Tiger Cats, a rematch of a 1-point victory for Calgary last week. We'll get to the matchup tonight a little more closely in just a couple of moments. But right now, we'd like to take a look back to Week 19 in Canadian football. We don't have time for the highlights tonight, but we'll show you the Canadian players from Week 19. Here's who stood out in our mind. This week's runner-up, Calgary kicker J.T. Hay. Last Sunday against Hamilton, the 9-year veteran from the Ottawa Sooners kicked 4 field goals to go along with 3 converts and a single. J.T. Hay accounted for Calgary's last 14 points as the Stampeders took a close one from the Tiger Cats. TSN's outstanding Canadian for Week 19 is Ottawa fullback Jim Reid. Against Saskatchewan, the 8-year veteran from Wilfrid Laurier rushed 4 times for 26 yards and hauled in 7 for 76 more. Reid's efforts were a big reason that the Eastern Rough Riders broke their 13-game losing streak. Ottawa's Jim Reid, TSN's outstanding Canadian in Week 19. Well, Reid had a big week last week for the Ottawa Rough Riders, and finally the Rough Riders snapped that horrendous losing streak that they were in. Jim Reid was a major part of Ottawa's victory over the Saskatchewan Rough Riders, and we had to give him that salute tonight, the Canadian Player of the Week. Well, time now for a closer look at both teams as they match up tonight, and first more on the Hamilton story from TSN's Mark Jones.
Thanks, John. You know, for years, the one thing you could always count on here in Hamilton was the consistent punting and place kicking of Bernie Ruoff. Any field goal from 40 yards and in was usually money in the bank. But that all changed in September when Ruoff was released. And since then, a couple kickers have come through the doors here at Hamilton, but neither has been able to get the job done so far.
The Tiger Cats rank last in punting yardage, but that really shouldn't surprise you when you consider that their punter is really a receiver.
Yeah, I've punted ever since I was in high school, and I'd like to keep a good average no matter when I have to punt or at what time. And my performance last time wasn't very good, a 30-yard average, but most of it was against the wind, but that's still no excuse because I did have a lot of time to punt. And I was just trying to angle them more towards the sideline where they wouldn't get any returns on them.
Stapler takes pride in his punting, but he'd still rather stick to catching touchdowns. It's a lot safer.
Last year against Calgary, I kicked a short punt, and up here, if you touch the ball or recover it, it's your ball. So I had in mind that I was going to do that, and I went down there and tried to get on the ball, and next thing I knew, it was a second half because I got knocked out trying to do it. So, you know, it has to be a really short punt for me to go do that again.
Place kicking is another matter of concern. The life of a field goal kicker is a very lonely one. Roy Kurtz and Derek Noble are hoping to turn things around for the Tiger Cats.
Well, it's something you really get used to. I remember the first time I played midget football, the coach said, you know, Roy, you're going to be the kicker. You got to be, you got to know all the jokes on the team. You know, you got to blend in like that. But when it comes to the game, it's like, yeah, you have to be on your own, and you got to do your own thing. You can't listen to other guys because everybody, when it comes down to the crunch, they always want to give you a little advice. But when it comes down to it, like you said, you're a loner. At the end of the bench, you got to just go through your mind what you have to do and just go out and do it, and don't let anybody else try to influence you.
I feel I'm ready for it now. I feel like I've been tutoring under Bernie for a while, and I've been with the team on the practice roster for like over a year and a half, so I feel like I'm ready to go.
There's a sign inside the Hamilton Tiger Cat locker room that says, win together, work together. Well, Hamilton has been doing little of both lately. But the kicking story is only half the problems. The other half are the injuries. They've had over 20 starters miss games during the course of the season. Sure, the Tiger Cats always finish strongly, but this year, it might not be that easy to turn on the switch. Mark Jones for the CFL Report. Now back to John.
Thanks, Mark. Joining me now on the sidelines, Hamilton Tiger Cat head coach Ted Schmitz. Lots of changes for Hamilton tonight, Coach. Do you think you can get it together for the Stamps tonight and for the playoffs with this many changes?
I still think so, John. You know, some of the people we're just wanting to take a look at anyway because they might be able to help us next week. So some of them were necessitated by injury, and some of them we're just looking at some people and. You know, guys could have played maybe, but it's probably better with a short week they didn't play. So we're going to take a look at some guys and see how they perform, and hopefully it'll help us out for our decisions next week.
As you look at this lineup tonight, what would be your biggest area of concern with the changes you've been forced to make?
Well, the biggest concern for me is our kicking game. That's what I'm concerned about. And Derek Noble's an unknown product. You know, I talked to his junior coach, and he you know, informed me of all of his success in the juniors, with the juniors this year. But I'm concerned about it. But, you know, we got to take a look at him, and hopefully he comes through for us. He's done a good job in practice, but that's not under pressure.
Thanks very much, Ted. We wish you luck tonight.
Thank you.
Now with the Stampeders story, Teresa Hergert. Some changes on the Stampeders as well, but not quite as many as the Tiger Cats have going into tonight.
To play for Larry Kuharich, you have to act and think like a winner. The Calgary Stampeders found that out quickly. Caught in an early season slump, Kuharich took over as head coach and turned this team around. He's earned the players' respect and has got their attention. The results are on the scoreboard.
He took over and certainly brought that philosophy with him, and with a little bit of simplicity, returning to some basic things about football, which is basically beating the guy in front of you. He started us on a roll, and I think more importantly, psychologically after that, we believe that we could respond to that type of philosophy and do well and have success with it, and it just has seemed to steamroll after that.
Kuharich's a loud coach. He calls them as he sees them. Last year, he could only yell from his seat in the press box. This year, the players are glad he's down by the bench.
Well, that's great. You know, anytime you get a coach like that, he gets excited, so the players get excited, and you know that he's going to back you 100%. And I think the guys prep up to that, and they respond pretty well, and it sure showed since he's taken over. You know, we won a lot of ball games.
The Stampeders' new receiver coach, Fred Bolitnikoff, worked with Kuharich in the USFL. He believes Larry is different from any other coach in the CFL, and that's the key to his success.
You know, Larry's just an intense guy. He wants to win, and that's the bottom line when you get out here and when you're in any athletic sport and when you're coaching it. You know, you want to win, and I think that the big thing he does is get across to the players that they're professionals. And the one thing about is, you know, you come up to Canada and you coach, and everybody thinks you're just up here to coach. You know, well, Larry's up here to win, and then, you know, when he asked me to come up and work for him, I'm up here to win also. Just didn't come up just to enjoy the scenery in the cold.
Kuharich is a player's coach. For the ones who needed a little push and confidence, his timing couldn't be better. After enjoying a successful season last year, Emmanuel Tolbert just couldn't hit his stride. Under Kuharich, Tolbert is coming back.
Kuharich has meant the difference since this team has had the big turnaround. The motivation factor, I guess, is the key thing, and expectations that he has of us. And everybody's kind of risen to a level, is what he likes to call it. And everybody just accepted the challenge that he put before us to just put out your best effort and give it your best shot.
With third place in the Western Division in their pockets, the Stamps may be looking just to finish up the season and remain healthy. But part of Kuharich's success has been his ability to light a fire under this team, and he knows he's going to have to keep the flames burning on Friday to ensure the intensity carries over into the playoffs. I'm Teresa Hergert for CFL Report in Calgary. Back to you, John.
Thanks, Teresa. With us on the sidelines now, Stampeder head coach Larry Kuharich. And you have to be pleased with the progress of this football team over, say, the last 9 weeks of the season, Larry.
Absolutely. I'm very pleased with the progress. I'm exceptionally pleased with how we bounced back after we've been licked pretty good on 2 occasions.
What's your major area of concern, if I can get you to look ahead toward the playoffs?
Well, I really frown on looking ahead because we have a tough game tonight, a real tough game. But in answer to your question, it's just that we play to the level that we've grown to. We bounced back last week to that level, and we grew to it before the BC game. And if we can maintain that level, I think we'll be in fine shape.
Larry, have you gotten over your anger of last week about TV coverage of your game against the Tiger Cats in Hamilton?
Well, I wasn't angry. I just thought it was an injustice to the men that made the Hall of Fame, and especially an injustice to the 2 teams that played a rough, tough football game there at Hamilton.
I think a lot of people agree with you. Thank you very much. Good luck tonight.
Thank you very much.
Ahead on the CFL Report, Leif Pedersen and his picks for the Week 20 winners. Welcome back. We're almost ready for the kickoff here in Calgary tonight. Leif Pedersen, my partner, has had a tough couple of weeks. 0 for 4 2 weeks ago, 1 for 4 last week. So I'm only going to get him to predict the outcome of this game. I want to make it as easy as I possibly can for you.
John, I am fading in the stretch. There's no doubt about it. It's so nice of you to give me an opportunity to have a 100% week, because I'm going to one game to pick, no question about it. Calgary Stampeders at home, McMahon Stadium. They're gearing up for the playoffs. They're going to pull this one out tonight with no problem.
All right, Leif Pedersen calls the Calgary Stampeders to win it. It's TSN's Game of the Week. The Stampeders and the Hamilton Tiger Cats coming up live on TSN. Stay with us. We look forward to a great one tonight. The CFL Report on TSN. It's our game around here, brought to you by Carling O'Keefe Breweries.